Okay, now let's talk about, as I said, Oswald Belka's Ditka and Richthofen's Air Combat Operations Manual just for a second, because I want you to understand how he taught his men and how he was actually flying that particular day, because there was a big discrepancy in some cases, as you'll see. I'm not going to go in talking about his mentor, Oswald Belka, in detail, but I did want to point out that he was considered to be the father of the German fighter air force and also the father of aerial tactics, and many of those tactics, along with Richthofen's, are still being used today. And recall that if you saw the video before we started the formal presentation, both Max Emmelmann and Oswald Belka were the first to receive the Blue Max. And in fact, exactly a year later was when Richthofen received his Blue Max award. Okay, so this is what Belka was espousing. He says, try to secure the upper hand before attacking and keep the sun behind you. Always continue with an attack you have begun. Wait for the opponent to make mistakes or flee. Only fire at close range. Always try to keep your eye on the opponent and try not to be deceived by tricks. Many pilots would go into a spin and go at low altitude and recover, and you think you shot the person down, and he gets away and comes back at you. In any type of attack, essential to assail your opponent from behind. If someone dives on you, try not to get around to attack, but fly to meet it. When over enemy lines, never forget your line of retreat. And then for squadrons, it's better to attack in groups of 4 or 6. In my book, I talk about this because today, as you know, when you have a committee or a group of people get together, once you get over 5 or 6 people, even in a administrative or a problem-solving environment, you just lose productivity if you get too many people. So I left highlighted the things that are important right here in Ditta-Bolka. Now, what about the Air Combat Operations Manual? The first section was how do I train beginners? The main thing for a fighter pilot is his machine gun. And he didn't believe in a gun jam. If somebody had problems with his gun, he probably wasn't operating it correctly. The tendency with new pilots was to hold the triggers down, and the gun would overheat and freeze up, and you couldn't operate it. And this, in fact, is what happened to Wilfred May, as we'll see. I place little significant value on the skill of flying itself. Richthofen didn't believe in a lot of aerobatics, albeit he was a very, very excellent pilot, and people that faced him said the guy was incredible. But he never took much credit for being a great pilot. He believed in doing the job and getting out of there, obviously. And in fact, he said, we need no aerial pilots, but rather daredevils, or people that are not afraid to attack the enemy. I insist on target practice in flight and high altitude, tight turns, full throttle. And you should know the terrain without a map to and from the area. This was a little bit of a problem because, as you know, Richthofen and his men traveled close to the front where the action was so they could respond to enemy aircraft and respond to help their troops on the front lines. Obviously, surprise attack from behind, your 6 o'clock position is not a good thing. But if you are attacked from behind, then you need to get on the offensive, as Bilko used to say. So these are the things that are applying to our situation now. Once again, the ones I still left highlighted. Individual combat, I approached the enemy until 50 meters, so tendency was for him to get extremely close to the aircraft because there was too many variables, too many dynamics in 2 very fast maneuverable aircraft, plus the dynamics of the machine gun rounds. And it was very difficult to shoot down an enemy unless you were basically right behind them or in position. Again, you don't need to be an aerobatic artist. You just have to have the courage to fly close. One attacks a 2-seater from behind at great speed and in the same direction, makes sense. And if one is attacked from the front by a two-seater, that is no reason to pull away. Individual combat against a single-seater is by far the easiest. And again, he was big on the surprise attack. If I'm attacked by a single-seater from above, I made it a point to never let up on the throttle, rather to make turns and dive at full speed. So use the aircraft to your advantage. So once again, those are the highlighted things that apply to the situation that day. One last one. During attack from behind at 3/4 speed, I must be careful that I never jump past my opponent, and one should never obstinately stay with the opponent who, through rather bad shooting or skillful turning, has not been able to shoot. You haven't been able to shoot down, but the battle lasts on the other side of the front lines. So, in effect, Richthofen is violating many of his own procedures here on this last day.